Welcome to Conscious Dominance, a DSRX studio production. These weekly conversations explore how to approach mindful leadership and inner dominance within the powerful container of committed, intentional relationships. Join Eric as he invites new dialogues, sharing practical insights for how the craft of consciousness opens the aperture to love, serve, and connect with unwavering presence.
Hi everyone, Eric here. I'm excited to share something special with you today. This episode originally aired on the Sensual Underground Podcast with Ildiko interviewing me about DSRX. She brought depth and curiosity to our conversation about conscious dominance, DSRX, and the paradoxes of power in relationship. I appreciated her questions. They allowed me to explore some more nuanced aspects of the work and the craft of leadership and the full spectrum of the feminine energy. Ildiko's approach to these topics is insightful, and I think you'll find her perspective valuable. I encourage you to check out Ildiko's work on the Sensual Underground. You can find her podcast on YouTube, and we've included links to all her social media platforms in the description below. Please settle in for this deep dive into conscious dominance and conscious relationship dynamics. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed being a part of it. Thank you.
Eric, what does conscious dominance mean to you?
Ildiko, well, first of all, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me. Conscious dominance. I think it's agency. You know, the word conscious dominance means to me that I have agency in my life and that I am not a victim of my circumstances, and that no matter what the situation is, I can choose how I want to respond to the situation. Between a stimulus and a response, there's a space. This is the Viktor Frankl quote. And in that space is your freedom to choose how you want to respond. And so to me, conscious dominance is a realization that there's always that space. There's always an agency that we have and how we want to go about choosing. And so to me, it's not about necessarily dominance over another person. Sometimes it is, but primarily the reason why I infuse the word conscious in there is so that it doesn't become conflated with a reactive, controlling kind of energy, that it's more intentional, it's more mindful, and brings more of a conscientiousness to the situation. And is this the appropriate dosage of power? It's not just power as a default, but it's saying like what is necessitated in this moment. And sometimes it's silence, it's nothing. And sometimes it's asserting myself. And so what is the situational awareness, and bringing situational awareness to any experience, whether it's with Rachel, with my partner, or in life in general, that I approach it all the same.
How did you get into this? Because you teach a very particular, specific style of dom-sub relating, which is not necessarily the mainstream BDSM paradigm, I would say, because it has a lot more nuance and it doesn't have this kind of like performative element to it that I think mainstream BDSM often has. How did you find out about all of these things?
Through life, through living it, so if I back up a little bit, I've been, from when I was young, very interested in mainstream BDSM. And part of my own journey was just my own self embracing that as a modality for myself to inhabit and to live. And I wanted to do it from a place of like ethical, right? So, and I was very interested in that. And I, in my path, came across the likes of Om, who I really appreciate, and other teachers along the way, and have had that in the bedroom and really respect and admire the mainstream sort of version of it all. Like, would go to play parties and would be around it and was experienced in all of that. And then when I got with Rachel, who is an incredibly conscious, cosmic, and submissive person, I had a complete ego death and just a massive kind of something occurred in my life with her that was the best way to liken it with is I've had some psychedelic experiences, and it's like that. Like, it felt like that. Like, it felt like something I went from, there was Eric here, and then there's Eric in a different space. And going through that journey, I realized I was not able to be in the same frame that I was before, because I was twisted up in my space. I wasn't able to access the same energy at all times. And yet we still had something going. And so I just got really curious, and I started looking around and seeing and trying to understand what was happening. And I found not so much that I was able to find places of reference in the world of BDSM, but I found places of reference in mythology and in tarot. And I felt like I was going through my own death experience, the death card, and then the tower, right? And on the other side of those is the star, right? And so the star, if you're familiar with tarot, I think you are, comes out of that. And I was feeling like I was having something, and I was also inhabiting my feminine side. And so there was a part of me that was like I had new territories within myself that I was inhabiting. And so I was in a space that was completely new for me, and I hadn't been there before. And so I felt much more like a child and felt foolish. And at first I was very judgmental of it. And I actually was working with Andrew, and we reached out to him because what's happening? And so as I was working with him, and then we befriended each other, and we'd have these conversations, and then I started this podcast, I started trying to figure out language that included the nuance of what I was going through, and also the nuance of being with. So there were two things that were kind of out of sorts for me. One was my own spiritual or internal upgrade. And in that, I didn't at all times feel like I was in a dominant space. And yet that was the appropriate place for me to be, was in something else. And then the other thing that was happening was to have Rachel, who is a very powerful woman, very ambitious, very strong, and yet completely submissive and completely feminine. And so she's full of these contradictions and these paradoxes and all of that. And so I was dealing with my own paradox, and then she had paradox. And so I was trying to reconcile all of this. And at first it just twisted me into all kinds of knots. And I had to go on these walks, and it was like wrestling with demons. It felt like it was these conversations that I would have with me, and in nature and reading. And I got really interested into mystics and like Richard Rohr, who's a modern day mystic, and other people that were writing about these experiences. And there's this book about from back in the day about this guy who is Iron John. And that book was really powerful too. It's from the 90s. And that blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is what's happening. Like I felt like I was going through this kind of experience. It was not just a superficial version of dominance. There was more complexity to it and more of a ownership completely of my darkness and my lightness. And they had to be merged. And I think my initial journey into BDSM was really about embracing the good boy and the bad boy. That the bad boy was actually really a strong thing. And it was very healing. And yet that was only before Rachel was just isolated in the bedroom. And then when Rachel came, it was like, oh, I need to examine this in all of our life. And how do I bring that energy to her, even and I also had an injury. So I had this spiritual thing, and then I got really injured. My shoulder was completely out. And so it just created a dynamic in our relationship. And then we also had some other challenges. And so the challenges weren't between us, but they were external, and it necessitated a different approach. And instead of bemoaning these challenges as though there was something wrong, I needed to build in a more nuanced concept, because otherwise the model felt like it was inadequate. And so I needed to create a new model. And so that's why, and I'm also an artist. And so it's normal for me to think like, I don't think, who am I to create a new model? That's what I do. I create new models. So, and so does Rachel. So the two of us were in these conversations, we're just like, there's something else happening here. And we both are astrologers, and we were like, this retrograde thing is part of what's normal. So that all kind of came together to become this DSRX that included a way of normalizing these retrograde moments, that they weren't like a flaw, that they were actually like a normal part of growth, that we have winter and then we have spring and summer, and there were these different seasons in a relationship. And I think prior to this model, I always judged myself anytime I was not on a growth trajectory that was really linear.
Yeah, right. And it's so beautiful what you have brought up, because I have had the same experience when I started exploring BDSM. You know, first when I dove into it, I just thought I was interested in it for like sexual reasons and for pleasure. But then when I really started exploring various practices with my first Dom, like my entire life changed. Like everything changed. And, you know, like everything that I'm doing today, also with my business, for example, is due to these experiences that I have had a couple of years ago. And I think what is so fascinating about BDSM, and why I also kind of like became obsessed with it, is because it has so much paradox in it, you know, like it is so, like, a lot of people think it's just this like very like extreme sadomasochistic sensational sexual thing, but it's actually not. There's like so much tenderness in it, and so
Oh, for
much
sure.
depth. And you know, there are also the meditative aspects of BDSM and subspace, you know, and just like being in this deep trance like state that to me feels like complete salvation. It is so, so deep. And when you are able to go to these places with another person, or when you as a submissive actually discover that you cannot lead yourself into these states, but that another person who has complete power over you in these settings actually can, it's mind blowing. It's truly mind blowing.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Talk to me about DSRX. So this is the new relational paradigm that you have created.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to expand upon it, it's I was frustrated also with DS because it assumed only in the bedroom. And I
Right.
said, if you're going to take it outside of the bedroom and you're going to take it as a 24/7 experience, we have to also allow for repair. We have to allow for times when I'm not completely in my dominance, or, that there are times when I'm off.
Mhm.
And how do we build that into the structure? And instead of saying like, oh, that's a problem, and it can be a problem if it's not managed well. And I think that's part of the whole journey for it. As soon as you can accept something, then you can work on it. And so to me, part of the journey of this has been really to own what you were talking about with DS. How do you bring that and make that your whole life? You know, and so how do, like, Rachel completely surrender to me and my decision making in every aspect of our life? And that's not necessarily something that just happens at once and it's just done. It's a process. And so to me, the DSRX is a commitment to that process. It's a commitment to a new paradigm, which says the woman can be, like you said, it's paradox, can be totally powerful, totally in her voice, and yet be completely surrendered and submissive. There's a term in the world of homosexuality where they call power bottoms. And in many ways, like, Rachel's like a power bottom. Like, she's somebody who's uh, completely submissive, and yet very, very much has a strength and a power and a voice to herself that I will listen to. But at the end of the day, part of the commitment is I am the decider, I'm the captain of the ship. And I think there's an energy with that and a commitment to that paradigm encapsulates. And so it was a way of saying, how can we have a paradigm that says it's not, I don't want the old, which is for me to be in my power through making her weaker, or through making her more without a voice, but
Mhm.
literally to, like, I want her voice, I want her strength, and yet I have to be more presence to encapsulate all of that. And it very much, going back to something that you brought up, your past with horses, and you said you had family and stuff that dealt with horses and stuff. And from the very beginning, I have some experience, very small experience with horses and small experience with animals, but I know that they feel your presence in a way. And it's the same, like you said, of women, right?
Yeah.
And so for Rachel, it becomes this, to me, DSRX is a practice, like, hey, I'm going to be a yogi, or I'm into martial arts, or it's literally a way of practicing relationship dynamics as a practice and as a commitment. And it's not about looking to her to say, like, huh, am I doing it right? I know whether or not I'm doing it right because I can feel the energy. And if the energy's off, I don't look at her as the problem. I look at me as the problem. And I think part of the DSRX model is to always, I'm always the problem. If there's something off in the relationship, it's me. It's never her. And literally, when she's off, that's not necessarily a problem, because her being in her emotions or her stress or whatever, if she's bringing that to me, that's great, because that means she feels safe that I can hold that and not get flustered by it, and so, like you said, the polarity of this is about paradox. It really is a polarity in the paradox polarity. And so there's always this sort of, it's not easily talked about, because a lot of what's out there is such a superficial version of it.
Mhm.
And yet we need to just take it one layer deeper. And then how do we hold that one layer deeper in
Yeah.
something? And I feel like this is where I appreciate myth and story so much, because it's all about holding paradox.
Yeah, and I also think what you just described is also such a beautiful paradox, because my experience has been that, I think, like, in DS relationships, there's actually way more freedom and way
Mm-hmm.
more consent than in most
Mm-hmm.
vanilla
Oh yeah.
relationships. And also the paradox of um, feeling so free in your submission.
Yes.
And so fucking powerful as a woman in that moment when you just surrender and submit completely. This is also something that I find so mind-blowing. You know, it's so paradoxical. And I think unless you have an embodied experience of what it actually feels like, it's very hard to comprehend, because for the mind, these dynamics, they are not really comprehensible, I think, in a way. And also, in a way, I think when you are really well handled in a great DS dynamic, like for me, that is the ultimate expression of feminine empowerment in a lot of ways. Because I think when you don't have a power dynamic, a consensual power dynamic, in most relationships, the woman ends up doing so much of the emotional work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like she's doing so much of like the care work and the housework already, and
Mm-hmm.
she is constantly managing and handling shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of women become so resentful of their men.
Yeah. And I think that's what I've seen and experienced myself, and seen with Rachel in our conversations. She's really helped me. She's incredible at surrendering and at honoring my leadership and my hosting. And her discipline is in showing up and listening and letting me lead and letting me host. And it is a gift to her. And it is something that, one of the pillars to me is hosting, because you're hosting an experience. It's almost like every single night there's going to be a game, something that's not a game, but it's some frame that I'm going to bring to our experience that she can just trust that the night and the day, or whatever the transitions and whatever we're doing, that she can just kind of relax into it and know that there's going to be something that she will enjoy. Or even if she doesn't enjoy it, at least she's not the one who have to figure it out and what it is. And if I need her to help me figure it out, I'll let her know and we'll talk about that. And like that can be a part of it. But I do feel like it has been insanely powerful. And another word for me is regenerative. So like regenerative agriculture, where, when you're not trying to keep death away, you're actually include the death as part of it. So part of this regeneration is that every time I go through an ego death, or I go through something that's really challenging, and I'm in my retrograde RX kind of moment, I come back with gold, with an alchemy, with something that's richer, and I'm able to bring more of myself and more awareness to the situation, because women are incredibly attuned to every situation, and they can tell whether or not we are attuned. And if I'm at all faking it or bluffing or full of shit or any kind of way, she can tell. So it's this incredible check on my bullshit and on my ego. And it's the best, if you want to grow, there's nothing better than to get into I think a DSRX situation, because it builds the growth into it. And there's a commitment to the dynamic, to dominance and to surrender. I mean, she's committed to submitting. She's committed to it. And so if that's the case, then it's on me, because she's going to be there. And like you said, it's extremely empowering, because she's able to literally, it has a way of lifting me up to rise to the occasion,
Yeah. Do you ever get tired or feel like you need to take a break from planning stuff, leading her?
No, this is one of the big things that we've talked a lot about, she and I, is the
Mhm.
fact that for her, the planning and the logistics is tiring and it's hard.
Mhm.
For me, planning and logistics is fun. It's play. Like I enjoy it. I get testosterone from it. You know, there's this great book, Beyond Mars and Venus. So you know, John Gray wrote the original Mars and Venus, and then he has this one, Beyond Mars and Venus, and he talks about in that all the hormones. And one of the most fascinating things is to do this deep dive on hormones, and you see that men, we are fulfilled by challenges. Like we need challenge. And we also need to feel like we're responsible for the outcome. Agency. We need agency. And so when we have agency and we have challenges, we actually are replenished in that. To the feminine, especially during much of her time of the month, those challenges are actually depleting and they suck away. And she actually needs to feel taken care of. And so it works perfectly for each other if we're clear about each other's roles. And I think so often, because women, as you said, are had to get so good at holding down the fort and doing all the work, they resent the men around them because they're not so good. And so the transitionary period, which Rachel and I very much still are in this transitionary of where she's relinquishing all that and then me taking over more and more, is a transition. And that's also another reason, you know, hence the RX, hence the retrograde. There is this period of sort of transition because women have become so skilled at holding down the fort. And men, there's some catch up to do. But it's not so much like we need to become more feminine or more women. We just need to become more better hosts, more awareness, more curious, more humble, so that we don't let our egos trip us up. You know, one of the biggest things for me has been to see how much of the time it's my ego that says, oh, I don't want to go there because it will show that I don't know. And so one of the most profound things for me to see is that I can have great confidence and not know and be curious. The curiosity and confidence can be one and the same. And that to not know can be very confident. And it's all about my energy in my interior and my frequency. And this is what animals teach you. You don't have to know what to do. You just have to not be afraid. And you have to not collapse energetically and not be in your ego and your bullshit. It's the same with a woman. You just have to not be afraid, not collapse, and not bullshit, and be in your presence. And your presence can be, I don't know where to go right now. I'm lost. Or I don't know what we should do tonight, but I'll figure it out in a moment. Give me a moment. You know, instead of bluffing. And I think women are just sick and tired of men's bullshit, and they're bluffing, and they're sick and tired of them being in their ego where they don't want to admit that they don't know, or they're not engaging in life, because to engage in life is to admit that they don't know something. And so I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of women. And I think when you get into a DS situation, you're taking full responsibility for the moment. Like this woman is literally getting like her life. And like you said, there's this great paradox in it, because all of a sudden you're handing over the most precious thing right there. Like there's a preciousness. So the care that I have to approach it with is the same care that I would approach if I was dealing with, I was a captain of a ship, or if I had a weapon and then I was dealing with. So men, we're all have some part of our life where we have to have great craft in the way that we approach something. It's the same with women. There's a craft. And once I really figured out that there's a craft of DS, and there's a craft not just of DS, but there's a craft of DSRX, there's a craft of healing, there's a craft to spiritual upgrade, and that there's a way to go about doing it, then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I'm in this space. Oh, I shouldn't process with Rachel all the time. I shouldn't bring all my shit to her, because it's going to affect this. I should pre-pave the way. I should create a container when I need to talk about something and pre-do this. Because if I'm just going to go bring my shit to her and I'm not reading the room, that's like a captain of a ship who's coming in the other room. It's like, there's a big storm coming and I don't know what to do. And blah, 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 blah. You're like, fuck, you're the fucking captain. Like, you should be the person that knows what to do. And there's this great story from the Endurance, which was the captain of the Endurance. This is down in the 1900s, and Shackleton is his name, and he had so much doubt. They get stuck. They're looking for the South Pole, and he gets stuck down there, and they winter over, and he gets stuck down there, and he's filling his journals with all of his doubt and all of his trepidation. And yet he comes to his men with great confidence, and the men are all like, oh, he's a great leader. He's a great confident. And so one of the biggest things that I've learned in the DSRX is it's okay for me to have doubt. It's okay for me to have fear. Like, I think I judge that so much. It's just not okay for me to just dump it wherever, whenever. I have to have a container to deal with that. And if I don't have a therapist, or if I don't have someone, I have found these phones to be great dumping grounds for my shit to chat. You know, like, use AI. AI, one of the best things that I've found for AI is to literally just word vomit all my fears and shit, and then be like, what do you think? Like, what? Because it's literally, it's not a human. It doesn't care. And it'll come back to me and be like, oh, it sounds like you're going through a lot and it's tough. And I'm like, oh, you know, and it's great. And to me, that's preschool, kindergarten, like that's step one. And then, okay, then we can kind of get back to earth and deal with whatever the situation is. But I think so many men, we don't even go to step one. We're just in our storm, and we're a victim of our stories and a victim of our emotions. And I think one of the biggest things that I've had to learn is, what is it to not be emotionally led at all times, and yet to be, what does the situation call for? And it doesn't mean I have to reject my emotions. It just means I need to be much more skilled at grafting those emotions onto the situation. And so honor the emotions. And if they're taking me over, then I need to excuse myself and go deal with that, and then come back and then deal with it. And I think that discipline is really the discipline of DSRX. It's like, I'm not coming to Rachel when I'm dysregulated. Like, the nervous system has been one of the biggest teachers for me of just learning what it is to be in fight or flight, parasympathetic, sympathetic. If I'm in a sympathetic nervous system, where fight or flight, and I'm coming to Rachel in that nervous system, she feels that. And I'm not able to lead her effectively. That literally, my leadership comes from my capacity to get out of fear and to be in a more solid place. And I think that's where, like, the chakras, and I think Om does a wonderful job of talking about the chakras and the lower three chakras, and how those are the masculine responsibility, and being in the first chakra and the second chakra and the third, like, that these places, I need to take ownership of these chakras and inhabit them and own them and live in them and dwell in them. And when they're dysregulated, or they're off, or something's off in that, that's my responsibility. And if I go to her for that, then that becomes a problem. And this is also really interesting. I think one of the biggest differences about sex for regular relationships versus DSRX, to me, people make everything about sex. People that aren't in DS, they think it's all just sex. Sex is a natural byproduct. Sex is going to happen. Like, she gets so fucking wet, horny, she just wants it. And my job is to say, no, actually, keep the frame and be able to pull the levers with it. And so it's more about the discipline and the energy that I do for the 23 other hours of the day, that when that situation arises, it's a natural byproduct. We're not like, oh, we're not worried about that. And you asked the question earlier, how do we keep this going? It's by focusing and prioritizing our polarity, our energy, me doing my work, and then her doing her work, and me being able to be there to support her, and never to shame her when she's in her storm, to actually encourage that and her tumult, and for me to not bring my tumult to her. So there's a double standard Like, I don't get to go to her anymore with my shit. Whereas she comes to me always with hers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is why these relationship dynamics are so ecstatic, because they are profoundly asymmetrical.
Yes.
And they're so, it's like they're so clearly defined that you find real freedom in that bondage of your role, because you don't have to do the mental gymnastics of, like, what am I supposed to do, or am I supposed to hold space for him now that he's going through something challenging, like all of that mental distress kind of like falls away, all of that second guessing. And I think the entire like modern spiritual culture, I think the new age has done people a profound disservice by implanting this kind of idea that freedom, true freedom, means that you are able to do whatever the fuck you want or whatever you feel like in the moment. And it's just, when you look at DS and how it really works, it's just not the truth. It's not.
Yes.
It
Not at
does
all.
mean to deny certain parts of yourself at certain times for the sake of the dynamic.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think I love what you said there. And it was one of the things that the freedom, this is not me saying this, Jocko says this, but discipline equals freedom. The discipline gives you the freedom, and there's a role that you inhabit. There's a job that you do and you live and you adhere to. And that's where, the other thing that part of DS is we reframed it to be, yes, we're interested in dominance and submission very much, but that comes through devotion and service. So I am constantly in a space of service to her. Like, that's my default. How can I be of service? And her default is devotion. She's constantly in devotion. She provides an energy of prioritizing me in everything and devoted. Like, she's the way she looks at me, just the way she is. I will do anything just to feel that energy of that level of devotion. It's an incredible energy, and it's not a performative thing. It just is. It's the air that we're in. And I think there's a discipline in that every single day. It's like, to me, we kinkify everything. It's like being in a kinky monastery. It's what our life feels like.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. I get
a
it.
dirty monastery. And so we travel a lot, and we're always, so there's always a routine. Like, there's the way we wake up and the way we go to bed and the way we do, there's a routine and a structure to it, and kind of a monastic life. And yet it's and we refrained from things and seasons and so we're very disciplined, but we never refrain from the polarity or the play, at least from a mental place. Sometimes we might go days or weeks where we're like, I'm not gonna, no sex or no intercourse, or there's this kind of play that we can do with this, but it's always to increase or decrease the tension of the situation. And so it's fun. It makes it really fun. And it makes getting older, and it makes being in a monogamous relationship ecstatic. Like, we can turn things that society thinks of as negative or as like this downfall, and we can turn it into something that can be really juicy.
How has Rachel's devotion changed you as a man?
Oh my God. 100%. I mean, there's 100%, because there's no question or doubt in my commitment to my growth. So you would think it's my commitment to her. That's done. That's for sure. But it's also my commitment to my evolution and my growth as a man. And because she's so devoted, it makes me feel every day, how can I die to my ego? How can I improve? How can I, without being burdened by it? But it almost feels like it's fun. It's like, when you're 18, you're 19, you don't look ahead at life and you're like, oh, it sucks. I have to like get stronger and I have to get smarter and I have to go make money. You're actually kind of stoked by the experience of getting to evolve and grow. Or you're 12 or 13 and you're like, oh, I get to be a teenager, and there's a growth feeling. Well, her devotion, I feel like I'm 14 again. I feel like I'm 18 again. I feel like I'm in this beginner mind quality where I get to be the fool. And then I'm safe to be the fool. I'm safe to bring my leadership to her, and I won't be judged if I fuck up, if I make a mistake, if the frame that I'm offering goes flat, or if something's off. I just know for sure that she's still going to just, I don't have to prove myself. And so because I don't feel like I have to prove myself, it gives me a freedom to be creative, to always show up and to take full responsibility for my emotions, my stuff, my challenges. So yeah, no, devotion it is the soil for which I can do my work. And I think it's not easy. It actually makes, again, paradox. There's nothing better, but there's nothing harder than
Yes.
being in this relationship, because I can't skirt by anything. It's like you can't like avoid like every karma. And it's not just my shit either. It's like, oh, being a man, being American, being alive at this time, I have to like wrestle with all of it. And I have to figure out how to navigate all of it, and karma, and all of this. And how do I can't just be like, well, that's not my responsibility. I'm not saying I have to go and make amends to the world, but at least I have to feel like, how do I feel about this and navigate this and own this, and not, I can't blame anyone else. There's no blaming anyone else or anything else for anything. And that actually makes it very challenging. And the biggest challenge that I have is being too hard on myself. And so I have to change my internal, one of the big practices too is just this radical compassion, and yet also a radical responsibility, and that they actually go really well together. And so when you say, how does the devotion change me? I mean, it's been everything from the full transformation. I mean, I was committed to this. I wouldn't be with her if I wasn't already on this path and committed to this, but it just takes it up a whole other notch.
Mm. Mm. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. There is something that you mentioned earlier that I would like to circle back to a little bit, because we talked about energetics and how, like being in your dominance as a man, it's like the energetic is very, I mean, I think it's kind of like the same. Like, I grew up around great horsemen. They all had amazing dominant energy, like so I think it's kind of like an energetic that all mammals, humans included, respond to like instinctively. And over the past couple of weeks, I have also had a lot of conversations with different women, and almost all of them at the end confessed to me that they have never explored DS, but they would actually love to experience submission, but they cannot allow themselves to go there. They are like so afraid of letting go. And also I think the biggest fear is to let a man lead them, because they have associated being led by a man with, being violated, being taken advantage of, being hurt, being humiliated, or made smaller. And my heart just breaks whenever I hear this. And I think there are also a lot of men out there who offer this dominant energy, but then when it kind of like hits the system of a woman, and she starts resisting because something is being stirred up in her. I think what she also does, because I have seen this in animals, I have seen this in horses, like so many times, a lot of times they will also test your dominance by rejecting you, by resisting your leadership. And I think a lot of men these days, they really want to do women right. And they are so empathetic towards women that oftentimes when a woman shows this first sign of resistance, he will just back away. And I think in a lot of cases, this is devastating because she wants to be led, but she just needs like maybe a slower approach, or maybe she's just, like subconsciously testing you. And like, but I have been wondering, because I imagine this must be so hard for a man to, like also feel out. Like, what would be your advice to people in these situations? Because I think a lot of people are in these states where they crave something deeper, but they cannot allow themselves to go there.
Yeah, I think you bring up something really an important point, and I think that something that I've definitely learned from Rachel and previous relationships. I've seen this with women. I've seen that the resistance at first, and it is actually them testing you, and so your capacity to navigate that without being a excuse my language, but like without being a dick or without being a jerk, and kind of and I've actually been the guy that's been the jerk. I've taken it too far, and I've been somebody who's backed off. So I think, to me, it's like anything. It's any craft, and you have to do the craft. You have to do it. You have to make the mistake. And I think so often the men don't want to make the mistake. They don't want to be too assertive. Be too assertive. Like, risk. You're going the other direction. Go the other direction. I would encourage men to be assertive. Make the mistake. Like, plow in like a fool. And if you are a good guy and you trust your edge, you need to go up to the edge. Like, you actually need to know where those edges are. And so I think for men, I would say risk the other direction. And I think for women, I think if a man risks the other direction, don't shame him. Somehow be able to still have a voice and yet don't shame him. And so the thing that Rachel does so well is she has a voice without shaming. And I think that is a power, because a lot of women, their tool for their voice is through shame. And I think, how can you honor him in his assertiveness and his agency, and yet say, I love that, but not right now, or not maybe just, I want that eventually, and explain to him that, like, one of my big things that I had to learn was I went from 0 to 60 in the first 5 minutes. I had to learn this whole thing called foreplay and energetic paving. And like, I was just so assertive right away that I actually had the problem of being too much, too fast. And so I had to learn that she actually wants that, but just, she needs some pavement, some what we call foreplay. And for me to see foreplay not as like, oh, the something before you actually get the thing you want, but for me to love the energy and the foreplay, to see that as an energy and a space in and of itself that was so wonderful. And this is where I love like mind fucking and mental play, because the energy becomes an opportunity for you to be able to create space prior to whatever you're happening that is in and of itself its own frame and its own entity and its own thing. And I think this is where the world of BDSM is so valuable, is that all of life becomes opportunity for play, for tension, for sexuality. And that's why it's so important to get away from thinking of sex as just penis and vagina and just physical. And so once you can start seeing it as something that's in the mental realm and in the emotional realm and all these things, and that you actually are the artist of it, there's a craft to it. And so what I would say to men and what I would say to women is commit to the practice. So the first thing that they need to do is say, we're in this relationship together, like own that they both want it. And once they're there, it's like playing a game. When you're a kid, you're both playing that game. And if you're little, you're just rewarded for playing the game. This is you. So you want to keep playing the game. This is where the infinite game versus the finite game. It's not about winning or losing. It's the fact that you want to keep playing the game. And so how do you get to keep playing the game? You don't want to be too rough. If you are, this person needs to say, because otherwise they're going to grow resentment. If a woman doesn't use her voice, she's going to build up resentment. So many women just are filled with resentment. And so you, as a dominant man, must encourage her voice so that you don't have any ounce of resentment in her frequency, and so that she's not doing anything from a performative place or anything from a place of obligation. Like, one of the big things for me was to really eradicate any sort of obligatory activity from Rachel. If she felt like at all obligated for sex or at all obligated to be of service or anything, I wanted to get that out of the way so that her energy actually was a natural byproduct of my leadership. That her sexuality was just grew from, because of that was the natural thing that would happen when I'm in the right frequency. And so when you say that there's this issue, I think it's because people don't engage. They don't know what the landscape is. And like you said, the new age and a lot of spirituality and a lot of the stuff means well, and even therapy culture and all this stuff, but it keeps everyone in this sort of neutered, neutral, friendly brother sister kind of relationship, and that's not hot. It's not sexual. We actually need to feel the tension. We need to feel afraid. I mean, we all love these things. Own that, integrate that, and risk it. And it's hard at first, and it's uncomfortable, but once you're there and you're inhabiting it, there's nothing better. There's nothing better than just being in that space. And it makes for, I don't have any like, oh, I want something else, and I've never had that. I've never been where I could feel so satisfied and yet so enticed, because there's so much possibility that's still out there.
Yeah, beautiful. Talk to me about mindfuckery and all the funny mental games that one can play in a DS dynamic.
Yeah, Rachel, I have to give props to her. I didn't know that term before Rachel. I actually was very much somebody who did I did unconscious mindfuckery. I was an unconscious mindfucker. I was a conscious sexual dom, but then like an unconscious mindfucker. So I didn't know that it was even a term. I didn't even know that it was there, all the potential that was there. And so it was something that when we started talking about what are our big turn-ons, and I would ask her, her biggest turn-on is actually mindfuckery. So it is her passion and her thing. And it's interesting, I have to admit that when I first heard that, I felt like, oh shit, and she told me about some guy from the past that she had done some things with online and all, and how much she was met by it. And I actually literally had like a moment. It was months. I just was like, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. The reason why I have a lot of compassion for a lot of guys out there, because I am that guy. I am that person who, even though I've had so much experience with DS and I'm here talking about it and I live it, I also deal with a lot of insecurity, my own doubt, my own inadequacy. I feel like very inadequate. And I felt like, oh, I can't measure up to this guy that she was in a DS relationship with before. And I was measuring myself to that. So what did I do as any good student? I went, there's a book out there about mind fucking, and I went and read the book and re-listened to it and just got really into it all. And what I love about it, or what gives us this opportunity, is that all of life becomes fodder for mindfuckery. Just us leaving in the morning to do transitions can become an opportunity for mindfucking. When we eat, or how we eat, or what, everything becomes a medium, a material for the art that's like fodder for it. And it also allows for anticipation. And I think one of the biggest things that I found with Rachel that she loves is she loves to anticipate things.
Mhm.
And so if I can create a game of mindfuckery, and mindfuckery really is to say, to define it, is to say, it's just how we're using our mental, our language, our words to create a tension where she wants something that I'm not giving her, or that there's something unexpected that's going to be occurring, or that the normal, it creates a space of surprise and a space of, whoa, what's happening? It's almost like you're in a haunted house, or you're at a movie, and there's something, good movies kind of mindfuck you a little bit, and the usual suspects, at the very end when they switch it around, that's great mindfuckery. And Rachel just loves that. So I bring it up. It's probably the place that I feel like I could stand to have the most growth in. Like, it's the most untapped. It's very untapped for the potential that's there for me. So I actually, something I think about and I write about, and yet every day I feel like, oh, it's hard to bring, I'm not doing it as much as I would like to.
Mhm. Thanks for sharing. What is your bigger vision for men and relationships in today's world?
I guess I think that's the same thing with untapped potential. I feel like relationships are the great place where this world, for us to become human beings, where I believe in humanity. I believe in the human project human. And I think as we get more AI and more machine and more technology, and we almost feel like being human is somehow less than, is somehow an inferior thing to the machine or to the AI, to the tech. And to me, the best the technology of human is the technology of relationship. They're one and the same. And I don't think we can feel the full experience of our technology and without being in a relationship. And I don't mean it has to be a one-on-one relationship. You can do this in a threesome. You could do it in 4. You could be in open relationships. You just need to be relating to other humans. And I also feel like you need to be in a relation. I don't think that we're in relationship till we're in polarity. I actually think that all relationship that's in that is sort of like when you have a hex, a tool, a nut, and it's going into this piece and it doesn't quite fit. The machine doesn't work until the things fit. So anytime there's what most people term relationships are just dysfunctional relating. It's not actually relating. It's dysfunctional relating. And you're not actually in the relationship till you actually have times where the craft and the function is functioning. And then when it's off, you can bring it back to that. But if you've never tasted something functioning, then you don't really know the full potential of what it is to be a human being. And I think it wasn't until I was truly in my in the DS, did I actually love being a man? Did I actually fucking love my body? Did I love the part of me that was fucking killer, that was a savage, that my sexuality, like all the parts of me that I had judged, or I had growing up in a religious situation that I had said that these are wrong or these are bad or whatever. It wasn't until I was in these moments in a very heightened sexual experience, this is before Rachel, that I fully inhabited all of me in those moments. And it was like, so when you're saying the future of relationship for men and women, the first step one is I need to be me with me. It's me with me with me, my relationship with myself inside of myself, and really coming to feel that. And when I was able to really feel that, then it's the relationship with her. And I think so much of like the problem, what I was talking about before, as a man, my relating to her isn't, this is another kind of radical thing that I'm going to say here, but I don't think men and women are meant to be in relationship to each other.
Mhm.
I think that men need to be in relationship to their inner feminine and their own relationship with the feminine, but that's not something that they need to externalize. It's actually something that's very internal. And the external is like your check. How am I doing? It's almost like the scorecard. It's like a way of saying, like, oh, this is how I'm doing with it. Oh, I'm getting feedback. It's like feedback. And then I go and I do the work and the relating, but it's me with me with me, or me with other men, but like once I'm with Rachel, the relationship between us is actually like a dance more than it's like a oh, we're relating, the way we think of relationship. And I think that's so much of the problem with relationships is that they're trying to like talk through it all and deal with it all with each other. And it's actually like, shut the fuck up, actually go over here, do your fucking work as a man. And for her, she can bring some of that stuff to him, but it's not about him trying to solve it. It's literally his capacity to find presence in it and to be in stillness in it. Does that make sense? And so, yes, this is the paradox.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense, and I'm also going to say something controversial. So you mentioned in the beginning that you kind of like approach it in a way that you are responsible for everything. So your woman's reaction to you is something that you actually take responsibility in.
Mm-hmm.
And if we also go back to that metaphor that all mammals react to energy, and there are a lot of similarities energetically between, you know, being good with horses and being good with women as a dominant man. If that is true, which it is, I think it's also safe to say that whenever a man has really mastered his craft of conscious dominance, he is, I think personally, way more powerful than the woman in his ability to lead the relationship into glory. Because if he is a skillful leader, if you take it back to the horse metaphor, a skillful horseman can handle any horse. Doesn't matter how difficult she is. You know, he will find a way to get that horse to follow his lead, and the horse will willingly submit. And I think in a lot of ways, the same thing is true in the man-woman dynamic. When you have a very skillful dominant man who knows how to handle female resistance well, how to handle her emotional storm, like, you can do anything. I truly believe that. But on the other hand, if the man is not developed in his craft, I don't think that the woman can turn him into a quote unquote king, or, you know, like there's all this rhetoric out there how women can turn their man into kings and, you know, like get their man to step up by leaning back into their feminine energy. And I think it's not true. That unfortunately it doesn't work that way.
I 100% agree with what you're saying. Yeah. I feel very, very, very true. There is what I say to Rachel is I say, you can make it worse. You can make it harder for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can't do the work for me. I am doing my work. I was doing my work before, after. I'll do it no matter what. Like, it's my discipline. It's me with me. I do it for me, not for her. I do my work because it is my discipline, my practice, and I know that I can hold and challenge to anything. And like you just said, I feel like whether it's the feminine is expressed through her, or it's the feminine is expressed through the leader in our country, or the people around me, or whatever's happening, how much can I be in my stillness? How much can I be in my awareness? How can I not close off my heart? How can I hold them and empathy, but also with strength and with power. You know, how can I lean into the situation and not lean away? How can I hold this? And it really comes down to love. You know, it really comes down to my capacity to be an expression and an embodiment of love that's transcendent from me. It's not about my love, and it's not about me getting pleasure or getting off or me needing, but it's me being a channel of love. You know, it's really truly like love. And when I mean love here, I mean love is the frequency that makes up the universe. You know, it's the thing that is the default of the universe. And sometimes that's expressed through violence. Sometimes it's expressed through dominance, but it's always engineering us towards more and more growth and more consciousness if we're paying attention. And I feel like this is where I don't want a life that with her that's just like pleasure or just her being compliant. I actually want her to be in her voice and in her growth and in her ambitions and her life force, and then also her health and her vitality. And so a lot of that is reconciling opposites. We're constantly dealing with paradox and holding that. And so, yes, I agree with you that for it is very true that the man that it is his responsibility, and that the woman can't make the man, and that if she's doing that, it will always be, the relationship will be it won't grow to expand. He will not be able to hold her or lead her because she's creating him out of the consciousness where she's at in her problem. So he has to expand beyond that to hold something that's much bigger. And that's why he has to have the ego death, because it can never happen through me, just through my knowledge and my strength, my physical strength. And I think that was the big thing that I learned, is I have to tap into something that's energetic, or that we might call spiritual or something. And you know this whenever you work with animals in nature. And I think for me, the greatest teacher and the greatest ally that I have is nature. That anytime that I feel out of sorts, anytime that I feel I'm off, I just go into nature, and it's just like I get all the codes, I get the clarity I need. I can just feel, oh, I am this, I'm with this, and I see where I fit in this, and how can I be a husband of this, you know, and the husbandry, that word of husbandry, of like, how can I be a caretaker of this and see this and hold this without owning it, you know, and really being in reverence and in awe of it, and let it be something that's even bigger than something that I am. So energetically, yes, I have to be able to hold this, and yet her wildness and strength is something that I think exceeds anything in the masculine. I think that's why another great teacher for me has been Kali, and like thinking about this Hindu god of this like head and Medusa and all this, and be like, can I be aroused by that? Can I be aroused by her in her space of that, and not fold or collapse when I'm in that presence?
Wow. I think this is going to be very healing for a lot of women to listen to, because there are very few men out there who are able to embrace a woman in her Kali energy, or who even want to go there. So Thank you so much for sharing that. I think this is like massive. It's really big. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If people would like to find out more about you or work with you, because you also coach couples, how can they find you, and how can they work with you?
You know, I think the best place is where you found me, is on Instagram, and DSRX _studio. So it's Instagram at DSRX_studio. And there's a link in there. Hit that link. That's going to take you to Arosha, and you can work with myself, or you can work with Rachel and I, or just Rachel. And so we're a team in this. We both do this. And so she's also great with men and women, and I also work with both as well. So yeah, thank you very much for having me today. It's been a really wonderful to be here. I love talking about this. It's my passion. I love it so much, and I really appreciate you reaching out, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a fascinating conversation. I'm so glad that you were my guest. And I will also put all of your links into the show notes. And thank you so much, Eric. It was amazing.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.